Confined space entry can be a dangerous activity and requires a thorough knowledge of the safety requirements in order to avoid serious injury. In this lesson, we will review the definition of a confined space, the different types of confined spaces, the potential hazard of confined spaces, the required procedures for safe entry, and the different roles and responsibilities of the entry supervisor, attendants, and authorized entrants. About 90 confined space fatalities occur annually in this country. Although confined space entry is not the leading cause of workplace fatalities, it is important to recognize that they can and do occur. In case you are wondering, the top cause of workplace fatalities are due to transportation incidents, homicides, falls, and being struck by objects. You will not be asked to do anything dangerous, but it is also important that you not become complacent once you become familiar with the confined spaces at your facility. Conditions can and do change. Some of the reasons we enter confined spaces include tank, booth, and equipment cleaning, inspections, repairs, and maintenance activities. Confined space entry, however, can be done safely if we adhere to established safety procedures. Before we go too far, let's make sure everyone understands what a confined space is. Confined spaces have limited means to entry and exit, can be entered, and are not designed for continuous human occupancy. All three of these conditions must be met to deem a space confined. Some key points to remember regarding confined spaces are: limited egress does not necessarily mean just one way in and one way out. It also means restricted access. Breaking the plane of the space opening with any part of your body is considered entry. Confined spaces are posted with a danger sign. Take this sign seriously, even if any hazards are not apparent. Some confined spaces require a permit to enter, while others do not. Let's look at a permit-required confined space first. A permit-required confined space contains or has the potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere, contains materials having the potential to engulf the entrant, has an internal configuration that can trap or asphyxiate an entrant, or has any other serious safety or health hazards. If any of these conditions are present, an entry permit is required. Additionally, an attendant must be assigned, and initial or at least hourly air monitoring must be conducted. Let's get a better understanding of the potential hazards that can be found in confined spaces. A hazardous atmosphere means there is a problem with the air in the confined space. Some examples include oxygen deficiency, too little oxygen, oxygen enrichment, too much oxygen, or the presence of a toxic or flammable substance. Too little or too much oxygen makes it impossible to survive without atmosphere supplying respiratory protection. If exposed to toxic substances, entrants can suffer serious adverse effects, such as chemical burns, loss of consciousness, or even death. Corrosives and carbon monoxide are common examples. Flammable gases, vapors, and dust can lead to an explosion or fire. Paint solvents and gases such as methane are common examples. Spaces with conditions immediately dangerous to life and health, IDLH, cannot be entered without the use of an atmosphere supplying respirator and other appropriate PPE. You will not be asked to enter IDLH environments. Engulfment hazards could trap or cover an entrant, leading to drowning or suffocation. Sludge, water, dip tanks are examples of engulfment hazards. Inwardly converging walls are a perfect example of configurations that could trap or asphyxiate the entrant if he or she becomes lodged in a trap. Any other serious safety or health hazards is a general description that prevents any other potentially dangerous confined spaces from not being identified. These would include such hazards as temperature extremes, fall hazards, etc. Some spaces meet the definition of a confined space but do not contain or have the potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere. These spaces are referred to as non-permit confined spaces if all other hazards can be eliminated or controlled. Although a permit is not required, there are several precautions that still must be taken prior to entry. We use a pre-entry checklist to verify safe conditions, and we test the air using a calibrated air monitor to ensure no hazardous conditions exist before allowing anyone to enter. As mentioned before, entry is considered to have occurred as soon as any part of the body breaks the plane of an opening into the space. What this means is, do not enter or place any part of your body into a confined space until instructed to enter by your entry supervisor. Let's look at the entry supervisor's role and responsibilities. If there are any energy sources to control, these will be locked out and verified by the entry supervisor per the MacLellan lockout-tagout procedure. Before entering a confined space, it is necessary to test the atmosphere. The entry supervisor will test the atmosphere using a calibrated air monitor to verify that it is safe to enter. This includes testing for oxygen content, combustible or flammable vapors, and toxic atmospheres such as carbon monoxide or hydrogen sulfide. You as an entrant have the right to view the atmospheric testing. Once the entry supervisor completes the initial air monitoring and records the results, he or she will complete the confined space entry checklist and permit. If the confined space requires an entry permit, the supervisor will assign an attendant, record the names of all entrants, and post a permit next to the entrance. Since an accurate head count of entrants must be maintained in a permit-required confined spaces, you will be asked to sign in for entry and sign out when you leave to go on break and at the end of the task or the workday. Always sign in and out when leaving. A pre-entry briefing will be held to inform you of any safety concerns and any procedures related to completing the task. The entry supervisor will provide you with the appropriate tools, equipment, and PPE needed to complete the work safely. Again, no one enters the confined space until the entry supervisor has completed these steps and given you permission to enter. As the person entering the confined space, you have several responsibilities. All entrants must attend the pre-entry briefing for discussions of any hazards and the work planning. Entrants must be able to easily recognize when something goes wrong. You must understand how to do the assigned task. You must use all tools, equipment, and PPE as instructed, and you must evacuate the space immediately if you hear an alarm, you lose communication, you encountered unknown hazards, you are ordered out. Remember, all entrants must sign in before entering and sign out when leaving the area. An example for breaks, lunchtime, etc. Follow all work instructions, wear any required PPE, and if you experience any signs or symptoms of exposure, immediately notify the attendant. You could be assigned the attendant responsibility. This role must be taken seriously. You are not simply getting out of work. The attendant has many responsibilities, including attending the pre-entry briefing, knowing how to recognize any potential hazards, acting as security for space entry, and maintaining an accurate head count of all individuals in the space. This requires ensuring that all entrants sign in and out upon entering or leaving the confined space. Remaining at the entrance at all times and be able to communicate with the entrance. There are several ways to communicate with the entrance, including radio, voice, hand, rope. Testing the air quality if requested by the entry supervisor and recording the results as required. Emergencies are never planned, so it is important that the attendant knows what to do in case of one. If either the monitoring results or the entrant indicates a hazardous situation, the attendant must signal evacuation, implement the emergency plan. This includes summoning rescuers, providing the location of the confined space, and if necessary, posting personnel to guide rescuers to the space, knowing whom to call in the chain of command. Attendants must never enter the space for rescue unless someone else who is qualified as an attendant is available to stay outside the space. In closing, entering a confined space does not have to be a hazardous adventure. Just as with any potential hazard, if the hazards associated with the space are controlled, the work can be done safely. You must do your part though. Follow these simple guidelines and you can work in these areas without creating harm to yourself or to others. Key points to remember are: confined spaces are posted with danger signs. Always obey them. Do not enter a confined space until the entry supervisor determines that it is safe to enter and gives you permission. For permit required confined spaces, sign in before you enter and sign out when you exit to go on break or at the end of your shift. Wear all required PPE and follow all work instructions. Make sure you understand any potential hazards and the signs and symptoms of exposure. Notify the attendant if any symptoms occur and abandon the space if directed to. If you have any questions regarding the material covered today, make sure that you get them answered before you leave. Please answer the questions on the quiz, circle your best answer. A score of 80% is required to pass. That's 8 correct answers. Take your time. Do not discuss with your neighbor or lick on his or her paper. Good luck.